I wanted to offer a few thoughts that may be helpful for us as we roll around the corner and head for another year. This thing that just keeps happening year after year. Several in our congregation have their birthdays on the 1st of January, and I thought that's very efficient, you know, because everything just starts over and you know exactly how old you are for the whole year. The rest of us have to sort of guess as we go along. But a great deal of success on the spiritual path is really about right attitude and understanding how to pick things up by the right string. We can't predict our karma, and we certainly can't control it. We just don't know what's going to happen at any time. We have a lot of ideas about it. We definitely have our preferences. We have our what I call the one-way contract. We came down from the astral world with all our conditions written out, and we kind of shake that contract at the world a lot, not observing that God never signed it, that we just signed it ourselves, and then somehow we thought it was binding, and are filing lawsuits left and right when we think it's not being honored. We just really don't know what's going to come. Life is full of unexpected experiences. I get Guidepost magazine, which is substituted in my life for Reader's Digest, which I used to read, but Reader's Digest isn't as entertaining as it used to be, so Guidepost is really great. Guidepost is like a 4 Kleenex magazine. You know, you just have these incredibly poignant stories of tragedy rescued by God's grace. But tragedy rescued by God's grace, there it is. So we're heading into another cycle. The world continues to hold itself together. I don't know how, given all the greed and anger and horror that has become the norm. But nonetheless, it keeps chugging along, and who knows what it'll be. So the only real safety we have is right attitude, because attitude determines not what happens to us, but what happens to us when it happens to us. Because what happens to us is just stuff. It just goes on. It goes up and down. It's the waves on the ocean. If the waves go up, the waves go down. If the waves go down, the waves go up. And we always think that we have the exception to the rule, but we don't. It always goes up and it always goes down. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is, of course, one of the classic treatises on yoga, which I never paid any attention to until Swami Kriyananda wrote his commentary 4 or 5 years ago. And it really just goes, it's a very austere scripture. When you read Swami Kriyananda's, when you read the Bhagavad Gita with Krishna and Arjuna, and you know, Krishna and Arjuna are pals and they're having a great adventure. So there's a little latitude in there. My devotee is never lost. You know, whatever effort you make, it'll come to you. And there's just a lot of more friendly repartee in the Bhagavad Gita compared to Patanjali. Patanjali is just the spine. There's basically nothing else in the sutras, just the spine in your chakras, and you're just there. And he's telling you how to get them in order. And I learned something very interesting from reading that book. I had a very gifted opportunity. I went to India by myself. I was on a lecture tour, but I had 3 days before my tour started, and I got that book. It was published in India first. I sat alone basically in this room for 3 days and just read that book. It was a great experience. And I learned something I didn't know. I always thought that my inner state of consciousness was dependent upon how I handled my external circumstances. What I learned from Patanjali is that our inner state of consciousness is completely independent of what's going on around us. That what's going on around us, and this is the only word I can think of, is entirely irrelevant. It really has nothing to do with how we feel. We allow it to control how we feel, but it's a complete illusion. Inner consciousness is entirely independent because it is the eternal, unchanging, from incarnation to incarnation. It's always the same, and then all this stuff happens around us. So we have this dilemma that we have to work with, and it's the single project that we have. Everything else is extra. The single project is, where is my consciousness. Not what's going on around me, what do I want, how can I have it, what a rotten situation this is. None of it. Where is my consciousness? And it's such a fascinating thing when you start just watching it, because sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down. Sometimes we're all depressed and grumpy. Sometimes we're just cheerful as can be. And we have this apparent cause and effect relationship. But Master himself said, I love the way he put it, because things happen sequentially, we imagine that one thing causes another. He said, but it's really not so. We tune in to a vibration of consciousness. And we choose into a low one, a high one, a middle one, a happy one, a sad one. And we tune in, we get the radio all set, and that's what we receive. And then we think that what changes the radio is, oh, circumstances get better. But really, it's our own inner vibration. Now, this is all very interesting, and when we get into the later part of this program, we're going to do a lot of mantras together, which is like the best way to set ourselves to what we really want to be, is to set our essential vibration on the level that we want our vibration to be. And that's why we're going to do these mantras. I'll speak about that a little more in a moment. In the meantime, a few years ago, you know how it is, sometimes you get these little aphorisms in your mind. A few years ago, I heard or read something that Swamiji said, and I wrote it out on a little piece of paper, and I scotch taped it to the corner of my desk. And I've read it, dozens, hundreds of times since then. Recently, a friend of mine asked where it came from. It turns out to be from the lessons of self-realization that Swami Kriyananda wrote, which I have to admit, I didn't even remember that he wrote them, much less that I got this out of there. But it says this exactly: may my devotion to God so absorb me that there is no room in my heart for any other love. Now, I kind of went back and forth on this, but I want there to be room in my heart for lots of other loves. But, of course, if our essential vibration is set, then everything else just flows after that, doesn't it? But what I understood from this, and this is what I want to share to all of you, we get so involved in everything we're trying to accomplish, what I'm trying to overcome, who I'm trying to be, how I'm trying to be patient about this and impatient about that. But this is the only thing we have to do. We draw more and more and more of that divine vibration, and it just swells up and pushes everything else out. And when I say any other love, it doesn't mean love for my brothers and sisters or anything like that. That's not the love that's being pushed out. The love that's being pushed out is ego love. The love that's being pushed out is, what about me? What about me? Hey, what about me? What are you thinking over there? What about me? What about what I'm worried about and anxious about and haven't done right and really need to do? No, no, no. We don't really have to think about any of that. All we have to think about is, may my devotion, may the devotion of my heart, that's how he put it, may the devotion of my heart so absorb me that it's all that I see. What is it that makes us miserable? We lose track of that, don't we? We think somehow this circumstance justifies my thinking that God is no longer with me. Now I have a reason. Now self-evidently, I have a reason now to be sad. I have a reason to believe that God doesn't love me. But if the devotion of my heart so absorbs me, there's just no room for thoughts like that. They just can't grow. They starve to death. There's no sunlight. There's no water for them. There's no fruitful soil. And another phrase I just read tonight, almost exactly the same, out of Swami's book about Christ. Every saint testifies from their own experience that the experience of God is such that all other desires are just driven out of your heart. See, that's what freedom is, because it's these desires. That world has to be a certain way. But instead of thinking about all those things that could be different, we just have to think about one thing. How much do I love God? And how can I love God more? And that loving of God may be all the things that we're doing. We've all just been through this wonderful Christmas celebration, and some of us were very busy for many, many days, very, very busy. But what we were doing is, why were we doing it? We were doing it all for God. It was our active way of loving God, vacuuming the temple, making soup, cutting vegetables, decorating altars, just coming and being present and singing with our whole hearts these beautiful Christmas carols. That's our way of loving. May our love for God, meaning whatever it is that we're giving, whether we're giving in direct silence of meditation, the whole attention of our being on the presence of God within us, or whether we're giving out in service and in cheerfulness and in support of others and in concern. But may the devotion of my heart so absorb me that there's just simply no room for anything else. All light, all darkness vanishes in the presence of light. And in this particular world that we're living in right now, society as it stands, we just really don't know what may happen. And we need to be ready. And we've done practical things to be ready, and everybody's working in their own practical way. But the way we really want to be ready is to make as irrelevant as possible external circumstances to our inner state of mind. And the only way to do that is not by sort of trying to get rid of everything that bothers us, but it's trying to be so connected to everything that joys us that whatever little ups and downs of global or financial catastrophe, we'll just sort of roll over it. And we will just be able to watch like interested observers from the simplicity of our spine. That's what every New Year should be about. How much deeper? Let our birthdays, all of our birthdays, be January 1st. This is my clean slate of loving God. Everything of the past is over. All of those incarnations, whether it's this one or the ones before, who knows, who cares? I remember Swamiji was physically unwell once, and I said, "Sir, how are you feeling?" "Oh," he said, "compared to eternity, just fine." I always loved that. Oh, compared to eternity. Look at this tragedy. But compared to eternity. In the end, we'll just look back on it. Swamiji said once, when you attain enlightenment, you look back over all those incarnations and you realize that the only thing that mattered in millions of lifetimes was every time you made a direct connection with the divine. And everything else is irrelevant because it never really happened. It was just the waves going up and the waves going down, the waves going up and the waves going down. The only thing that ever happened was that one thread of spirit running all the way through it. So the question is, how soon and how strongly do we grab that? And how much of our lives do we live just in relation to that? And then, we take care of all of this. Once we were in India at a confluence of two huge rivers. And you could, because it was India and they weren't worried about being sued all the time, you could just walk down these concrete stairs and hold on to this chain and put yourself in this incredibly tumultuous, dangerous, life-threatening situation. But I loved that. I just loved it. There you are holding on to this chain and everything is swirling around you. And you just plant your feet on this concrete and you just hold the chain. Like that. That's how we all need to be. Just with both hands and with our whole hearts, heart, mind, soul, and strength. Just hold on to that chain and then enjoy the ride. Whether you're weeping, whether you're laughing, it's all the same in the end. It's just all the same in the end because none of it is you. None of it is me. The only reality there is our inner consciousness. So this evening, we're going to start. We have the two mantras that we often do on Sundays. The Gayatri mantra, the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. We're going to let Swamiji lead us, and we're all going to chant with it. And we'll chant for some minutes together. And the power of these mantras is the actual vibration of them. Because you see, our consciousness is nothing but vibration. We either choose a low vibration or a high vibration. And these mantras have the highest possible vibration. So what we're trying to do here tonight is we're all of us together, just trying to bring our vibration right into the center, which is epitomized, which is perfectly expressed through these mantras. So we'll say the mantras together for some minutes. So close your eyes and center yourself deeply in that sound. Try as much as possible to concentrate completely and only on syllable by syllable as it comes out, whether you're speaking it or just listening. And concentrate also on allowing even your very physical body, just every part of ourselves, to become aligned with that vibration, and let that be the beginning of the way we live this entire year.